Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I have something that's a little bit odd. As you can see, this package isn't exactly in the best condition. Basically, this is, to my knowledge, a knockoff, which is interesting. I've never bought a knockoff toy before, and I wasn't sure if this was a knockoff at first when I purchased this. The branding was a little weird, but it looked pretty legit, so I went ahead and I bought it, thinking that this was potentially maybe the Figma. I believe this one specifically is the Demon Souls Figma figure, and well, it showed up, and clearly it's not. So yeah, this is just going to be a knockoff video, which is interesting. Not that I have anything against knockoffs. I've seen some pretty decent like knockoff figures before. There's one I've been seeing on Reddit a lot recently. I believe it's a knockoff Wolverine in the brown suit that looks a lot like the Mafex Wolverine figure. So that one looks pretty good, and for the price, I mean, honestly, you get a pretty decent deal out of that figure. So, I'm not saying knockoffs are bad. I am saying that this is a knockoff, and we will judge it accordingly, I guess. So, let's get into it. Starting with the front of the box, it's it's you know, I'm sure it was a nice box before it got damaged in packaging. I'm not saying it shipped in this condition. It looks a lot worse on the back. We'll get to that in a little bit. I'm not saying it shipped in this condition, but it is the condition it arrived in, so that is super duper. You can see pretty much everything has fallen out of place except for the actual figure itself. It says handmade toys number 590, whatever that says down in Japanese lettering up there. Nice picture of the figure right there in the corner area side of the box. On this side of the box, you do have the figure in a cool, interesting pose, holding up the Moonlight Great Sword, which is interesting. This is the side of the box that's a lot more beat up. The mail carriers did not take any amount of care for this package, which is awesome. Thanks, guys. Cool. Appreciate ya. But yeah, so it shows you just basically a couple more poses that you can get out of this figure. It looks really, really spectacular. It's pretty dusty, unfortunately, but I'm about to open it, so it's not like that really matters. This little set right here looks really, really pretty and fun. I'm into that. I'm into most of these sets. It looks really quite nice. And then you have kind of that pose from well, that's specifically from Dark Souls, isn't it? That guy you meet who gives you your flask in the first Dark Souls? I don't know. Specifically, I'm pretty sure this was a Demon Souls thing I bought. It could be from Dark Souls. I think that would be equally as, viable. More artwork on the side of the box, and let's just go ahead and transition to the figure. Okay, so this is pretty much everything you get. You do get a nice assortment of goodies, so let me push that guy back there for a little bit, and we'll focus on some of the cool little accessories. I set it to autofocus, but it doesn't seem to work. One of the nicer things is this specific shield right here. It looks very, very nice, very well detailed. It feels heavy. It has a very nice heft to it. I really like this point at the bottom when he holds it. You can really stick it in the ground and it's not really gonna go anywhere, which is nice. On the back, it's also fairly detailed. It's nice looking on the back. Obviously, not as detailed. You can see the paint's a little wonky. There's some overspray here, some lack of paint in certain areas, but overall, it's fine. I do believe these come out, so when you want to poke it into the back, I believe that's something you can do. I believe. Why else would there be a hole there, right? But anywho, as far as I know, that is something you can do. Plug that right back in if you needed to. So that is one of the shields. The other one, of course, he is holding. Then you have one huge, basically a great sword. I'd say this is a pretty apt name for this type of weapon. It is also fairly decently detailed. You have all the markings in it. It's a lot like the. Gosh, this is based off of something I just forget. It's not one of the weapons I use a lot in the game, but I've seen it and I just don't remember the name. But it's very well replicated in this toy form. Also has a bit of heft to it, not too plasticky. It feels solid. It doesn't feel rubbery, is what I mean to say when I say plasticky. But yeah, it looks very, very nice. You can see all the scratch details, the wraps around the actual handle. Feels very solid. I'm very into this sword as well. Then you have two sets of swords with two variations each. So you have sheathed and unsheathed versions of these swords. Let me try and get it to focus on the swords. I'll have to hold it in a particular way. So they're the same swords, essentially. Slight differences in quality on each sword. This one just is unsheathed, which is a pretty cool detail. I also really, really like the hilt on this specific sword. I like the way it looks, the nice golden paintwork all the way down on the straps, I guess it would be called. The sword itself does feel a little more lackluster. It feels a lot more cheap. As opposed to the shield and the greatsword, this one feels a lot more, well, really just a lot more typical. Will you focus? Nope, I have to manually do it. It feels a lot more typical to what you would find with just an average regular toy. So that's fine. It looks good. Quality is okay. This side's a little worse for some reason. That looks very gross, honestly. That looks kind of disgusting. This side looks fine. But as far as quality goes, I mean, it's pretty cheap feeling. It has some, you can see, like, right there, where of course it doesn't want to focus, right there, it has that little mass produced little plastic piece where they kind of snap it off of the thing. Focus, man. You were focused for like 1 second and then you unfocused. There, that little blip right there. Little cheaper, this one, little nicer. And then you have a slightly shorter, slightly more, like, I would call it like starting weapon type sword. Same situation, comes with its own hilt. Very nice looking sword. Not the coolest looking sword, but it is just a nice sword, so that is cool. Then you have a couple of different hands to go with the figures. So starting with this one, I believe this is also a weapon in the game, though it looks bad in this toy form. In fact, give me 1 second. Okay. Oh, come on. It gets there and then it goes away. So this is another type of weapon that's more like, kind of like one of those fist type weapons, like punching, regular old punching type weapons. It's fine. You can see in the front it looks really, really cheap. Not well made at all. The sides and stuff look fine for what it is. It's definitely not the same type of quality as the swords. And then it comes with the hand, but the hand comes off, so I'm not sure why the hand is specifically attached to this. It could have just been any one of these hands, but this one is the one that is attached to this weapon piece. It is a little kind of smoothed out in the area that it will hold, but like, again, those hands would have worked just fine. Uh, so this one goes there. Then you have, let's see, two sets of fist hands, which look fine. Let me get them in a way that I can show you. All right. Yeah, they look fine. I like the details on this one. It looks, as good as I would want it to look. The autofocus moved. There we go. Just nice little details. Nothing too spectacular, but it does look like a decent, nice fist hand, of course. Then two open palm hands, which look nice. I like these because you can kind of show him looking at his swords, kind of inspecting his weapons, or maybe he's in the middle of talking, some dialogue. the exact same type of armor as the other hands, which I guess would be expected, but they look fine. Then you have one more grippy hand. This one's slightly tighter, maybe for the smaller sword, because the other swords are a little thicker in the base. So this one's slightly thinner. Come on, let's focus now. We're right there. Yeah, slightly thinner in the grabby area. So I do believe it is intended specifically for this sword, because this sword is a little bit thinner. So that is nice. It does look maybe a little bigger than this sword, but you know. And then we have a stand, which the stand I was excited for, and then I go to use it, and it's not exactly the best. It is something I can tighten. Just get one of those tiny screwdrivers and tighten it up right there. But even still, I don't know. I don't really like using stands unless it's like absolutely necessary. And so far, he stands pretty decently on his own. So I don't think I'll be using this. It's not the biggest. It's not heavy. So when I tried to use it, even like, just to hold on to him, I kept like tilting the stand out of the way anyways. So it just wasn't working, regardless of the fact that it's pretty loose. Now, as far as the actual figure goes, the accessories that are already attached to him, this is, of course, the Moonlight Greatsword. This is one of the weapons I use most often in all of my playthroughs of the game. That hand's just going to fall off. I adore this weapon. I love the history of it. If you kind of listen to the dialogue, it sounds like the guy you get it from is actually using a fake, at least in Dark Souls 2 specifically. And it's just a very cool lore about this weapon specifically. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to get this figure, was because of how much I love, one, that game, and two, this specific weapon. Is it that cool in person? I mean, from here down, I'd say, yeah, this is pretty cool. It has a nice red ruby right there, the nice gold accents, which look very, very nice. But the actual sword itself looks very, very, very bad. The sculpt is fine, but it doesn't have that translucent effect to it. It doesn't look like kind of like a crystal type thing. It kind of looks a little cheap, a little plasticky. It doesn't feel like the other swords where they're like metal. This one's supposed to be, made more out of a different type of material, but it's not selling that either. So it's kind of stuck in between those two, and it makes it just look cheap and plasticky. So a little disappointed by this specific sword. This is, of course, the main selling point for me. And I was just a little tiny bit let down by it. It's not like it's that bad, especially for the price I paid. For this whole set, $30 wasn't that bad. And it got here, relatively quickly. It took a little bit longer than it normally does, but I got it. So, and I've had it for a while. But yeah, for that price point, I can't be too upset with what I've acquired here. Um, I don't know. It's cool, just not what I was hoping to get. And then, of course, this smaller shield, which I do appreciate this smaller shield quite a bit. I think it looks very, very nice. Let me get this hand off of here. Oh, and we took that piece off. I do like this smaller shield a lot. I typically, for the longest time when I played these games, I just never used shields because I didn't like blocking. I preferred to just roll around. I kind of played it how you would play Bloodborne, the Souls-like games, the Dark Souls specifically. I would just roll because in the game you have what's called iframes, which are invincibility frames. It's when you're in an animation, if you time the animation just right, you when you're getting attacked, the enemy does no damage to you because you are stuck in a certain animation. It doesn't happen for like if you like jump or if you use an emote type animation. It's specifically for like opening a door or rolling specifically. So I would just do that. I would time it. I would wait for the iframes to hit and roll, and that way none of the attacks would do any damage. And I did that for the longest time, and then I got older and I got less capable of being able to nail that timing. So I had to go back and learn how to use shields. And now that I've figured shields out, I use them a lot more than I used to. And so, little pointless tangent aside, this shield, honestly, it doesn't look great. I mean, sculpt wise, it looks fine. I like the design, but this specific dragon on the front looks actually horrible. It looks like I drew that personally, and I'm not a good artist, so that kind of tells you the level of artwork we're working with here. It just looks sloppy. It looks plastered on. It looks like it's missing paint. Well, now that I look at it more, it looks more intentional that it looks as bad as it does. I don't know. Maybe that's by design. I do like these little notches here in the shield showing that it's been used and attacked and hit. I like that. The little studs along the side of the shield, very nice details. On the back of the shield, not much to look at. This is, again, something that pops right off. I gotta look at the back of this guy. He doesn't have a hole, so how would that work? Why would they do that? He has a hole to plug in, which makes sense for, like, specifically this sword. You take the sword, plug it into the nub, and now he's walking around with a sword that's too small for that hole. That's interesting. Why would they do that? That's way too small. That's not even close to fitting. Interesting. Okay, well, it doesn't work there. Does it work on the other sword? This one? Oh, that's even smaller of a nub. It doesn't work for that one. Does it plug in anywhere else? Oh, you know what? I see what they did. There's a little nub right here on his belt. Let me make sure it's focusing. So when you go to plug it in, you can plug it into the hole. So he's holding it along the side. Okay, that makes sense. But in terms of... Oh, God, it doesn't want to go in, actually. But in terms of the shields, how do the shields work? How do magnets work? Okay, now that's plugged in like so. I believe... Let me see. Hold on. We're experimenting here. Thank you for being loud, PlayStation. I believe... Okay, I thought maybe this nub right here would plug in. No, that's not what it is. Why would they do that? What is the point in that specifically? If you can't plug it in, why are those removable? This figure didn't come with instructions or like a little information sheet, so it's not like I really know how some of this stuff plays in together. This shield also feels very solid. I do appreciate the shields being pretty solid pieces. I don't understand, besides the stand, what that hole is for. I assumed it was for holding weapons, but that's clearly not the case. And I also assumed... I guess it's removable so you can get the hands on there. So, like, if I wanted to apply this hand, it's easier to do with the shield out of the way and then plug it in. I guess that would be the most logical reason why that exists. I don't know. Interesting. I assumed it was for plugging into the back. That is disappointing, though. I would have liked to have seen him, you know, be able to hold the shields on his back. But I guess that's not, like, the end of the world. Alright. The hands fell off of the figure. Let me put them back on so we can look at them. That is one thing I have noticed with this figure, is the hands are not the best in terms of staying on the figure. And neither is articulation, but we'll get to that in a bit. As far as design goes, I love this armor. I adore this armor. This is one of the armor pieces I look for most often in every Souls-like game. Not just specifically this armor, but the cover armor, or like the more regular knight looking armor, I will always hunt that down to try and use it because I love the way this more standard looking typical armor looks. I love this aesthetic here that they're pulling off. And it's kind of hard, to be honest, to find exactly this type of armor. Everything else kind of uses a lot more cloth, or it uses it's a lot more bombastic, or it's like a thief or a mage, or like it's going for different things. To find armor that looks like this, you kind of have to find it. Like specifically in Dark Souls 2, it's literally almost at the very end of the game that you find the armor that's on the cover art, which is the armor I like. It, gosh, I find it. Where's the spot? It's you go into the. Oh, I don't remember any of the names. It's been so long since I played it. You go into the scientist's castle, and he has all those experiments, and there's a lot of spiders. He has a spider pet, right? And then, gosh, it's something about being teleported somewhere. You drop down into a hole. There's a bunch of traps everywhere, and you can find the cover armor on there. I don't think this is the cover armor for Dark Souls 2. I believe specifically this is Demon Souls. But, you know, this type of armor. Gosh, I wish I could remember specifically. But the point being, you don't find it till late in the game. So, very excited to have this armor. I love the shoulder pieces, this side being a lot more protected, I believe. You know, there's got to be some reason behind that. I believe keep this arm light so you can swing your sword a lot more easily, but then this arm will, you know, you have your sword over on this side, swing, and then he swings back, and you're protected because of all this. I believe that would be it, and then you have more armor like this, kind of on this side of it. You just keep your less protected side over here, and then it's also less heavy, so you can swing your sword around and stuff like that. It's also a very creaky figure, very, very creaky. The joints are very tight on this thing. We'll discover later on. You do have this nice plating right here. Nice cloth bits, of course, plastic, but they're supposed to resemble the cloth. The pouches, stuff like that, very cool stuff. Overall, it's all well made and well designed. Well, it's basically just copying from the game, but it looks good. It's a good representation of it. My only main issue is the torso's like this long, or the legs specifically are this long, and then the torso's like literally almost half the size, and it looks very awkward. Like very, very awkward. I don't like the proportions of this figure, is what I'm saying. It's also a very thin torso. It's very skinny. Like the legs kind of are a little thicker, and then it really just kind of pinches off right up here. So that's unfortunate. I guess that means we can transition to articulation, which is not something I'm looking forward to talking about with this figure because it's not great. Specifically in the torso area. So let's start with the head, which can go back to basically not at all. It can go back to about right there. I believe it's just on a regular old ball joint. In fact, let me pop it off. Oh, Lord. Hold on. Oy. Interesting. Okay. I wanted to move this scarf piece out of the way to kind of help look at the articulation. So it's on two ball joints. It's on the neck ball joint, and then there's another ball joint down here in the head region, which is nice, but it doesn't exactly work. Also, that ball is like spiky, which is interesting. I haven't seen a spiky ball before on these action figures. Oh, that's going to be a pain in the ass to get back on. Am I going to have to go get heat? I don't want to break this. It was cheap, but it doesn't mean I want to break things. Let me go apply heat. Okay, I applied heat. The head's back on. Without this little scarf in the way, you actually do have a pretty decent range of motion, which is interesting. It doesn't look good, obviously, because that opens up this hole right there, this cavity essentially. Not a big fan of that, and the neck scarf doesn't hide this. In fact, it doesn't. It kind of hurts it because it takes away the articulation. But you do get a decent range of motion, which is shocking. I was not expecting that when I pulled off that scarf. Going forward, though, is basically nothing. I tried tucking this down in there, which you can kind of tuck it down in there, but it doesn't feel intended. And you can see same problem where it opens that back up in the back. For some reason, they put all the articulation down here in the neck and nothing, basically nothing up here in the head area. It does tilt side to side in ways. It keeps catching on the rest of the torso, which is limiting how much it can actually move. If I scoot it to the side, then turn it, then it can go. But if I just keep trying to turn it left and right, it catches, and that is, annoying. It does mean that there is room for like posing. I just have to work with it, which is annoying, but not the end of the world. Arms come up to literally, I would say about right there, which is actually awful. And you can see this arm, really, it just wants to pop off like instantly. I don't know why they made this nub so small, but that's very annoying, and it keeps happening in multiple areas. If I pull up higher, it just pops off, and you can see it's just on a little ball joint, which is not well designed. I don't like that. It does allow it to like kind of rotate forward, rotate backwards, but it doesn't allow it to actually do anything. Same situation over here. Obviously, this is going to be a little bit more in the way, but it does a good job at moving, I'd say. Oh my god, these wrists, they just don't want to stay in. No, none of these joints want to stay in. Right here, doesn't want to stay in. Down here, doesn't want to stay in. The hands, doesn't want to stay in. None of this stuff wants to stay in, and that is severely hindering the enjoyment of this figure. I mean, it looks good, but in terms of articulation, it just completely, quite literally, falls apart. It is double jointed, and you can kind of see they did go for that Figma, that more elite tier style of articulation, but it doesn't, one, look good, and two, oh my god, the hand fell. It's so tight, it really just does not want to move, and that's after applying heat, and it's still that tight. It does bend fairly well. I mean, look at that. That's basically about what you would get with really, in this day and age, really any modern day $20 figure. But, that's about what I would expect / want out of a Figma expensive figure, about to that degree. Wrists are those kind of classic expensive style wrists where they can go in and out and pop out and then, rotate. Oh my god. Rotate around, change in direction, stuff like that. Fairly standard wrist areas. Ab articulation is, again, lacking. Basically, this whole belt area really gets in the way. So it can tilt side to side, which is fine. Going backwards, I mean, it can go a little ways. Nothing crazy, but nothing awful. Going forward, it basically can't go forward at all. It can stand straight up and down, which is unfortunate because, as we saw on the packaging, it had that pose of him laying down. I can't really accomplish that unless he's kind of like this, and that doesn't look good. So, unfortunately, does not go forward very much at all, and it's not even necessarily the belt that gets in the way. Particularly going forward, it's just the way it's designed. The belt does move out of the way fairly decently, about what you would want it to move. It's just the way it's designed. I mean, I can keep pushing. It feels like, yeah, it's just going to pop out. Then I can actually remove that. How much else can I remove? Just that? It feels like this piece right here is glued on. Yeah, that's a part of the sculpt. So I can remove this part of the torso. And then plop this back on. Ooh, are we okay? There we go. And you can see he does have, I'll allow you to focus. He does have not a horrible range of articulation, but even going forward, it's just, it hits right here. It doesn't want to go any further than that. It also feels pretty loose, but it does go back fine. It goes side to side fine. The belt was hindering it just enough. It is nice you can remove it though, and it doesn't look necessarily too bad. In fact, if you make some soft good accessories for this and replace this with soft goods, I think that would look fantastic, and it would operate a lot better. But I do like having this on. I'll probably put it back on, but for now, for articulation purposes, I'll keep it off. But the legs, unfortunately, I cannot figure out how they articulate, and honestly, I'm just dealing with that. It just pops off. It looks like, okay, it looks like it's on a ball joint, like the shoulder pieces. And then on top of the ball joint is just like more of a regular, sorry, I know you can't see, but I'm trying to figure it out. More like a regular piece, but it's one, very tight, and two, no, it's just a ball joint on top of a ball joint. Interesting. Why would they do that? Okay, well, okay, maybe that's why he's so much taller in one leg, because I have to push it back down. It comes up, certainly. It just doesn't feel good lifting it up to that point. It feels like it's going to break, especially, well, right there, but especially in this area, which I just saw stress marks, so I'm not going to pull on that any harder than I already did. But it, like I said, it feels like it's going to break when I lift it up like that, because it's so tight. It doesn't feel like it's going to go. And now that I popped it off, it keeps wanting to pop back off. Same with this leg. This leg's even tighter. It just really doesn't want to move. And I know I only paid $30 for this, so it's not like if it breaks, that's the end of the world. But I really don't want to break this. And it's kind of hard to avoid that. Double jointed, creaky knees goes to about right there, which is, again, that's actually more than fine. I do like that. This joint that I mentioned earlier is a swivel at the thigh, so it will rotate there at the thigh area. And then the knees just pop off in both directions. So in the upper thigh and lower thigh, which I don't mind. It just happens more than it should, and then it creates this awkward gappage. And then the way this knee is designed, it really pushes out this knee. Sorry, you can't see anything. It's not focused. The way this part is designed specifically, it pushes this knee out, so it doesn't want to sit in there correctly. And that just made it so I don't know what way is the way. Right side up. I believe the smaller side goes up and the bigger side goes down. So let's plop it in there like so. And like so. I'd rather it pop off than break, but that's a little ridiculous. This leg's the same way. But again, just not great. Ankles are like the only thing on this figure that feel perfect. These ankles are exactly what I want. They go down, they go up, rotate, etc. You know, any direction you kind of want it to go in, it'll basically go there. It's just the feet are kind of too small. That's my only major complaint with the ankles. Everything else on this figure is weird. And now you can see this side of his body is a little too tall, and that's something I've been having to deal with since I opened this figure up. I don't know, guys. It is a tough sell for me. Even at $30, it's just not at a scale I like. The proportions are weird. The hands keep falling off. There are $30 figures that exist that are significantly better than this in multiple ways. This isn't awful, but it's not what I was hoping for. I knew not to expect anything spectacular quality-wise, but I was hoping to get more out of it in terms of like, gosh, these joints. In terms of, I don't know, in terms of enjoyment, I guess. I'm more frustrated with it than I am enjoying it. And there's a lot to enjoy here. Like, all the accessories are pretty decent, with some exceptions. The look of the figure is really, really nice. I love the design. Of course, it is just borrowing the design from something that already exists. But, it executes that well. It replicates that well. The feel of it does feel pretty solid. It does, um, except for the areas like in the shoulder and these joints that keep popping off, it does feel solid. Those areas feel a little cheap. The nubs being too small and like the arm areas, weird. Stuff like that is a little wonky, but beyond all that, it does feel fine, except for when I go to move it around. Now, even if I just have this as like a statue piece, as like a pose it, put it up, forget about it type of toy, I don't think I can get it to pose in a way that I personally would like to see, like on my shelf. I don't think there's any type of like pose that doesn't look a little annoying to me, because it'll always constantly be like slightly gapped in the arm, or slightly like not bent in the way I want it to be, or whatever. It's always going to have something about it. Like this piece sticking out way too far, I'm always going to notice that. The knees, him standing a little bit too tall on one side of his leg because the joint kept popping out and now I can't get it to pop back in. I'm always going to see that, and there's no like erasing that once it's posed. So I was hoping I'd at least get that out of this figure, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get that, which is a bummer. With that being said, $30 isn't an awful price for an almost Figma. It isn't a Figma, to be clear. Let's not kid ourselves here. But Figmas are around, especially for like a Dark Souls, Demon Souls type thing. They're around $150. So getting that idea for literally a fraction of the price, I'm not too upset. I just noticed this hip is a little higher, so it looks like he's dancing, or like standing, like, I don't know, like Taylor Swift or somebody who just performed on stage. But I don't know. Yeah, there's some things I like about it, some things I'm frustrated with. But overall, I'm not heartbroken that I spent my money on this, especially considering I spend my money on a lot of stupid things. This is just maybe one more thing that's honestly not even that bad. I'll pose him. I'll put him up somewhere. He'll look okay. He won't look great. He'll look okay. Uh, but I won't have to deal with trying to pose him anymore after that. I mean, look at that arm. Why would you go with the ball joint instead of just like a regular joint? Because that's just not going to give us any range of motion in his arms, unfortunately. Like, I want him to hold the sword, but he keeps popping his shoulder out of place. That sucks. And then that keeps popping out. I don't know, dude. I can't say I'm that upset, but then again, I look over at my Ultimate Edition collection and I'm like, those are a lot better, and they're the same price. But this did come with a lot more accessories, so it's one of those things, man. I was thinking about this. If Figma is like a Target, this is a Dollar Tree, which I think might be a little harsh, but that's kind of where I'm at. I get Dollar Tree vibes from this. Like when you go and buy like a little toy, even the Pokemon cards, they just feel cheaper. They feel more like a scam than if you bought them from like a Target. It feels like somebody opened up all the cards, took all the good ones out, and then left you with basically nothing. And, That's the vibes I'm getting here. Even though it's not quite that bad, it feels like a Dollar Tree version of like a expensive toy. All right, well, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Have you found this figure yourself? It's not like it's that hard to find. I found mine on Walmart. I didn't even have to go to like eBay or something. I wasn't scammed. I knew what I was getting. To be clear. So, uh yeah, have you guys found it? Let me know. Leave a like, leave a comment, leave a subscribe. All the things YouTubers ask you to do. Just do for me as well. And I will be back with another video, hopefully, very, very soon. Bye.